Well, good morning and praise the Lord, everybody. And good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. We are here for yet another day, another edition of our Good Morning Grief Devotional. I want to thank you for joining us. It's your boy, Pastor Corey Allen Duncan Sr. Privileged to be the senior pastor of the City of Hope Community Church, virtual pastor of Hope Nation, and also your certified grief coach for 2023. That's right. Thank you for joining us. Excuse me. Thank you for joining us on today in a very special way as we continue to navigate through our grief one day at a time. This is the daily devotional, daily grief devotional that is strategically designed. Let me get it together to help you to navigate through your grief one day at a time. We are excited to have that opportunity, right? Grief, my brothers and sisters, it is the natural and normal response to loss, change, and transition that results in the expressions of feelings and emotions. Grief is what you feel on the inside. Mourning is how it is expressed on the outside. And that's why we say good morning, because mourning is a good thing. Mourning is a great thing, right? We feel what we feel, but we reveal what we feel, and that is good morning. So I want to welcome you into this place. I want to thank you for joining us on today. I hope and pray that this just continues to be instrumental in your life as you navigate through the grief that you're grappling with on the inside. Excited to have the opportunity to walk with you along your grief journey, and I hope and pray that God is healing your heart. You got to remember that small steps lead to great distances. And so as you continue to take these small steps, these daily steps, it's going to take you far. It's going to lead you to great distances. And so we are grateful and thankful to have the opportunity to continue to journey on. Today is day 63. Can you believe it? For 63 days, we have been coming to you, giving you grief bites, giving you devotionals, helping you to navigate through your grief for 63 days, 63 lessons, 63 opportunities for you to be able to grow in your grief. And so we are grateful for the opportunity, y'all. Let's get to it, y'all. Today we're going to talk about remember our dragons. Remember, it should have said your dragons, but remember our dragons. Our grief quote comes from J.K. Rowling, which says, her grief was so big and wild that it terrified her, like an evil beast that had erupted from under the floorboards. Her grief was so big and so wild that it terrified her, like an evil beast erupting from under the floorboards. Does that describe your grief in any type of way? Has your grief been wild and like an evil beast that just burst up out the floor? Have you had moments to where you felt like your grief could be described in that way, where it was wild and untamed and like an evil beast that just erupted from time to time? Because sometimes, my brothers and sisters, that's what grief feels like. We're gonna talk about it. We're gonna get into it, y'all. Let's do it. Here it is. Let's think of it this way. Our grief is as big and powerful as our love was. Our grief was as big and powerful as our love was. Did I skip a thing? Hold on. Wait a second. Hold up. Wait a minute. I want to make sure I got all my slides because I think I'm missing one. I don't want to miss nothing. We want to make sure you get everything you're supposed to have that we navigate through all of this. Here it is. Let me see. 1, 2, 3. I want to make sure you get it now. I want to make sure you get it. I want to make sure you get it. Sometimes our grief scares us. It can be violent. Yep, 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 yep. Yep, yep, yep. I knew it. See, I knew it. 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 Hold on one second. Hold on one second. Hold on, because a change is coming. All right. I'm like, wait a minute, that didn't sound right. So I knew we were missing a slide. That means it's gonna be real good when the enemy be trying to make you forget stuff. Or did I just forget it, right? We be trying to blame the enemy for everything. All right. Here we go. Let's get to it. Day 63, remember our dragons. Sometimes, my brothers and sisters, our own grief scares us. Let me ask you this. Has your own grief scared you? Have you been going through this process and you find yourself in moments where your own grief has scared you, has frightened you, has made you like, oh my God. Anybody, if that's you, put me. If that's you, put me in the chat. If that's you. If you've had moments or times where your own grief at times have scared you, put me, put me, put me, put me. If that's you, put me in the chat. If your own grief has at one point in time, in one way or another, somewhat scares you. Ooh, that's everybody. That's everybody. Okay, that's everybody. Enraged. Somebody said enraged. Okay, awesome. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Sometimes our own grief scares us. It can be violent, racking, and loud. It can scream, wail, and keen. Here it is. It can be erratic and out of control. Does that sound like anybody I'm talking to? That your grief has been violent, racking, and loud. It's screamed, it's wailed, it's keen. It can be erratic and out of control. I remember there were times when my father passed and I would come home. This is when it was super duper fresh. And I would just come home, you know, and I just come home, I'll come through the door and tears is coming out of my eyes, and I just go straight to the bedroom and I would jump on the bed and just grab the pillow and I would just scream in the pillow. I would just scream in the pillow, right? I would just release it in that particular manner. I would just scream in a pillow because I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And I was faced with the reality that I wanted to change. And as much as I've been able to change stuff and work through stuff, and when things didn't go my way in life, and I was able to finagle and let me do this and let me do that, well, let me do this over here, let me piece it together, let me get it together. I knew that there was no Olivia Pope in this, right? There was no fixing this. There was no strings I could pull. There was no person I could call. There was nobody I could pay. There was nothing I could do to undo this. And everything within me that's a fixer that attempts to make situations right or to undo, the things that are not favorable. I couldn't undo this, right? And so wrestling with that reality, and I would just come home, I would grab the pillow and I would just scream in the pillow. I would scream in the pillow. Loretta says she drove out of the country and into the scream. Yes, right. And so we know it can be all of these things, right? It can scare us. It can be violent. It can be racking. It can be like, it can scream, wail, keen. It can be erratic and out of control. Even among those of us who are normally quiet, button up people, our grief can now and then explode. Where's my quiet and button up people at? Where's my quiet and button up people at? Quiet and button up. Look, I'm looking right at Stacia. I called you out. But for the quiet and button up people, right? For the people who are usually quiet and reserved and really don't express a lot of emotion, a lot of times, that grief can absolutely positively come out and it can explode, right? It can explode. Check this out. It can explode. Have y'all had explosive moments? Has anybody here had explosive moments? I mean, just explosive moments. I was like that the other night. I jumped in my car. Yes. That you can have explosive moments where it just ignites or it just launches or it just explodes. It's so much, it's like a pop bottle. And that's why we talk about mourning is so important. Alicia says she had one yesterday. Yes. Stacia said exploding on folks that don't deserve it. Yes, we do, right? We it's like a pop bottle that you shake up and it explodes. And that's why we continue to press the narrative that grief is what you feel on the inside, mourning is how it's expressed on the outside. And so if we have little continual moments where we can, let it out, right? Hopefully it doesn't build up to a point to where it just all out explodes, right? But you got to get it out because you'll have those moments where you will explode. So you have explosive moments. Check this out. Our grief can now and then explode. Let's think of it this way, right? Our grief is as big and powerful as our love was. Woo! Now that's a paradigm shift. That really helps you to understand that this is the thing. Your grief is as big and powerful as your love was. And a lot of times that's why the grief was so explosive, because your love was so explosive. That's why the grief is so great, because your love was so great. That's why the grief is so intense, because your love was so intense, right? So our grief is as big and as powerful as our love was. And I know some of you be wondering, why does this pain hurt so bad? Why is this pain so great? Y'all, the pain was so great because the love was so great, right? Um, what did Tupac say? Tupac said in this song, Dear Mama, he said, now ain't nobody tell me it was real, no love for my daddy because the coward wasn't there. He passed away and I couldn't cry because my anger wouldn't let me feel for a stranger, right? He said that part, he's like, remember dad passed away? I couldn't cry because my anger wouldn't let me feel for a stranger. So a lot of times I don't feel nothing because I don't even know you. I didn't even love you like that. You wasn't even there for me like that. So there's no connection. So what is there to express, right? But if you flip that coin over, the pain is so great because the love is so great. And when you loved loud, and when you loved hard, and when you loved intensely, and when you loved a lot, and when you had that type of love for the individual that left, y'all, a lot of times the pain would be just as loud, will be just as intense as the love that you had for the individual. Check this out, it gets gooder. Let's think of it this way. Our grief is as big and powerful as our love was. When someone who made our life worth living is taken away from us, of course our grief goes crazy with rage and fear and despair. You hear that? When someone who made our life worth living, when they made our life worth living, when that person is taken away from us, of course our grief goes crazy with rage and fear and despair. Why? Because this individual made life worth living. Because my husband, my wife made life worth living. Because my mother, my father made life worth living. Because my son, my daughter made life worth living. And so, of course, my grief is going to rage, right? Because I had so much love for him and it ran so deep. Check this out, y'all. Oh, it gets gooder and gooder. Check this out. It's like a dragon guarding its treasure. It's like a dragon guarding its treasure. Oh, the wrath when the treasure is stolen. I love this, y'all. Y'all got to get this picture. Y'all got to get this in your mind. It says it's like a dragon guarding its treasure. And oh, the wrath this dragon will display if indeed that treasure is stolen, right? Ooh, where do we go from here? Check this out. So the next time terrifies us, remember our dragons. Come on. We can remember our dragons. Something precious has been stolen from them. They've been awoken. It's only normal and natural for them to roar in protest. I love the visual, y'all. I absolutely love the visual, right? Because someone who made life worth living is taken away from us. So, of course, our grief goes crazy with rage, fear, and despair, like a dragon guarding its treasure. And when that treasure is stolen, oh, the wrath that the dragon will feel when the treasure is stolen. So, the next time your grief terrifies you, the next time you have an explosion, y'all, you can remember our dragons, that something precious has been stolen from us, that we've been awoken. Here it is. And it's only normal and natural for you to roar in protest. I would tell y'all to go ahead and roar right now, wherever you at. I know. And it's okay. Y'all can go ahead and roar. It's like something precious has been stolen from you. And if you can remember that dragon roaring in protest and swinging its tail and hitting the ground because the treasure has been stolen, that's the way we react. And guess what, y'all? It's okay. It's like you roaring in protest because someone so significant who had been so significant for so long has now gone on. And there's a part of you, part of the grief process, part of the mourning is to roar in protest, right? And not that, um, yeah, it's just to roar in protest. So let's look at the final thought. My grief is big and wild. When it needs to erupt, guess what? It's okay to let it erupt. My grief is big because my love was right. So my grief is big and wild. And when it needs to erupt, it's okay to let it erupt. Y'all got to remember day 63. Remember our dragons. Come on, questions, comments. I know y'all in the chat, y'all was releasing them. I'm going to go back and get them. Questions, comments, questions and comments, questions and comments, questions and comments. Alicia said, I felt so guilty and very apologetic after I exploded. Yeah, sometimes you got to let it out. Sometimes I know Stacia says sometimes we let it out on folks that don't deserve it, and we'll make it right. We'll go back and fix it and apologize and do what needs to be done. But yeah, it can be explosive. Loretta says that's deep. Bless you, Loretta. Donna Smith, grief is as big and powerful as our love was. I always said I grieve as deeply as I love. Wow, that's right. You are absolutely right. My grief had me back to feeling greatly unsafe, silenced, and withdrawn, like I was in a big, dark, empty place, all while being surrounded by many people. Yeah, sometimes it'll do that. It'll push you in them places, right? Feeling silenced and withdrawn. That's when you definitely gotta connect with your village or somebody, right? To help you. People don't understand. Now that we got this lesson, we understand. Other people may not understand outbursts. Other people may not understand you roaring or allowing that dragon to come out, right? But now you got a village of people. You got a village of people who definitely can connect with you and relate to you and understand what that looks like. Miss Stansberry, how you doing, Miss Stansberry? Misguided anger. I'm mad and angry that my mother not here, so issue situation is blown out of proportion. Yes, and so definitely misguided anger. And it's like, how do I channel this anger, right? Because anger is actually a healthy emotion, right? When channeled properly. Somebody said the same fire that can burn down a house and cause casualties, is the same fire that if it's channeled, it can heat up your stove and fix you a nice meal. It's the same fire that when it's channeled, in the fireplace, it can warm up the house and give you a cozy evening. The same fire when it's in the barbecue grill can make for a wonderful cookout. And so you got fire in both instances. One of them is wild and raging and out of control, can do a lot of damage. It can be detrimental. But the same fire over here, when it's channeled properly, oh, it can be instrumental. It can bring you a lot of joy, right? And so definitely you want to have anger that's guided, that's channeled in an instrumental way. So just said I needed to hear this. To God be the glory. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Loretta, Pastor, do you feel that God understands us being upset with him when he takes our loved one? Absolutely. Absolutely, because anger is a natural emotion, right? It's a natural emotion. Think about it like this. There were times where you were mad at your parents. You didn't understand every situation and circumstance. There were some things that you didn't fully understand and comprehend till you got older and you seen it from a different perspective. But everybody, I would dare say everybody at least one time or another were angry with their parents, right? At something they did or did not do that at the time you didn't understand, but later on you was like, okay, I get it now. I like the old school song said, we'll understand it better by and by. But there's some things that happens in life that we don't understand, why loved ones get certain sicknesses and diseases, or why they leave early, or what we deem to be prematurely. And just navigating through all of those different things is hard to comprehend, it's hard to deal with. Um, and so, yeah, the Bible says, "Be angry and sin not." So, being angry is not the sin. It can cross over into that area, right? But that's why we have to express it in a healthy manner, and don't let it evolve into. You don't want your anger to evolve into bitterness, or to evolve into a point to where it does become sinful. So, absolutely. Miss Ruth said, "I'm the quiet one, and can relate to this devotion. I love hard." That's awesome. Absolutely. Yvette, misplaced aggression was my issue for many years, but I'm working on it. That's good. Continue to do the work. Continue to do the work. Camille Cox, yesterday I was crying in the car. My grandma's anniversary and my friend's birthday is coming up. Have been a little snappy myself. But so it's good. And I'm glad all of you are recognizing that, because you know what it is. You know it's grief. You know what you're dealing with. And so you're recognizing it for what it is, and you are owning it. That's what's important, that you own it. You have your moment. We have nobody's perfect. We'll have outbursts. We'll have moments. You recognize it for what it is, and then you begin to own it. You begin to own it and just continue to navigate through it. You're going to have your moments, right? And sometimes it does. It may spill over on something else, but own it, recognize it, right? Own it. And I think that's what's very important. Melody Crabtree, when I lost my brother, I was mad at God, but I kept holding God's hand and I gave it to him. My church offered me grief counseling and helped me along the way. Now I facilitate the grief group. Come on, facilitating the grief group. I'm glad. See, you navigated through that experience, which is so very important. Somebody said earlier, I made a post yesterday and somebody commented on it, and I thought it was so good. They talked about how the enemy moves through your emotions, right? He moves through your emotions. He utilizes your emotions. That's where the deception comes in, because he utilizes your emotions to try to do damage, right? And so he takes how you're feeling, and that's what he manipulates. He manipulates the emotions. So angry is a healthy emotion, right? But that's when the enemy tries to creep in and whisper. And that's when he tries to pervert it. And that's when he tries to do his greatest damage, right? Through your emotions and through how you feel. And so even with that, yes, you can be angry, but who are you processing life with? Who are you processing a situation with? Who are you doing life with in the midst of what you're going through, so that they can help you frame things in a proper, fashion. Um, and then as you navigate through that, not allowing yourself to be open to the enemy and his deception to play on your emotions, and then, because he wants to drive a wedge between you and God, and death, and being vulnerable. Oh, that's the perfect opportunity, because you're already mad. So here comes the enemy rapping, right? It's God's fault. If he all powerful, he would have had the power to save him. He ain't no healer. He ain't. Look at how you feeling. And that's the God you serve. That's the God you trust. So that's when the enemy starts whispering, playing on your emotions. That's when the enemy wants to drive a wedge between you and God. That's when the enemy wants to divide and conquer. That's when the enemy wants you to get mad, so you stop going to the house of God. You stop praying. You stop serving God. He wants you to turn your time and your attention to God in the midst of all of that, and to forsake him, right? That's his desire, right? That's his desire. That's what he did. So he's trying to get as many people as he can to join him. And that's why you got to be careful in those vulnerable seasons. You got to be careful in those times. You got to be careful in those moments, because the enemy, you got to remember, we just preached on it last week, right? Hidden agendas. There's a hidden agenda. He comes to steal, destroy. And so he plays on you in your vulnerable seasons to get you to do just that, right? He wants you to do just that. Um, and that's when he does his greatest work, right? That's when he does his greatest work. And so you got to be careful as you navigate through that. This is so real, Lord. Haven't spoken to God in 5 months since my husband passed away. Yeah, that's what the enemy does. He draws that wedge and he wants to get you to be so mad and angry at God because of what happened, because of what we don't understand that we don't talk. I was saying last week that you got to know the difference between your advocates and your adversaries. And I'll take it from a child standpoint. A lot of times, because parents say no, or parents put boundaries in place, or parents don't let their children do what everybody else do, a lot of times kids think the parent is the adversary, but they don't understand that the parent is the advocate, right? That the parent is the ally. That I say no and I got boundary and I'm putting stuff in place for your own safety and protection. And watch this, because I love you. They don't understand and they'll mistake it. They'll allow the enemy to persuade them that the parent is the enemy. That they don't want you to have no fun. We'll think the parent is the adversary when the parent is the advocate, right? And so what happens is we take the same approach with God. That the enemy begins to act as if and try to convince us that God is the adversary and he's not an advocate. If he's an advocate, he would have got you. If he's an advocate, he would have saved your loved one. If he was an advocate, he would have heard your prayer. If he's an advocate, he would have answered your prayer. If he's an advocate, then he would have moved on your behalf. If he's an advocate, then he would have did whatever you asked him to do. And that's where the enemy comes in and plays, right? Because you got to know, just like a parent to a child, right? God to us, God is sovereign. At the end of the day, God is sovereign. He does what he wants, when he wants, how he wants, where he wants, with who he wants. And watch this, he owes nobody an explanation. Just like a parent owes nobody an explanation. And God, watch this, God says, yes, they were your child, but they were my child too. Yeah, they were your husband and they were your wife and they were your sister, they were your brother and they were your mother, they were your father. But God says, hey, they were my child too, right? And then there's some things, you know, that we don't understand. Like Isaiah says, my thoughts are not your thoughts. That there are going to be moves I make that you will not comprehend. Just like as a parent, there were things you did that your children didn't comprehend. The Bible says, God says in Ecclesiastes, we can't even explain how the bones of a baby are formed in the womb of a mother. Think about it. Conception takes place. You're pregnant. Now all of a sudden, this baby for 9 months start growing. You can't explain how the bones are formed. You can't explain how the bones of a baby are formed in the womb of a mother. You can't explain how all of these systems start to grow and develop, from the skeletal system to the nervous system to all. You can't explain it to me. Break it down. Break it down. I want you to break it down. God says you can't explain how the bones of a baby are formed in the womb of a mother. How could you possibly? How could you possibly know the mind of God, right? If God is so sovereign and so omniscient to where he has the capacity and the ability to do that, right? In which we cannot explain. And then certain things begin to happen in our life and transitions, this, that, and the other, which we cannot explain. We can't explain. We don't know the mind of God, right? And that's where all of that faith comes into play. Faith is the lifeblood of the believer, right? We walk by faith and not by sight. Sight says my loved one is gone. Sight says I'm hurting. Sight says, God, why? That's what sight says. Faith says, I'm going to trust you with all my heart, lean not to my own understanding, but in all my ways acknowledge you because I know you'll direct my path. Faith says, right, we walk by faith and not by sight. The just shall live by faith. That without faith is impossible to please God. And so many times, especially when death occurs, we are so much in our feelings that we forget to be in our faith, right? And yes, you got permission to feel what you feel, right? You gotta feel what you feel. We feel it. That's grief. We feel it and then we reveal it. That's mourning. So you got to feel it, but we can be so much in our feelings that we stop being in our faith. And what happens, the reason why we get weaker, because faith is like a muscle. And if you've been working out, if you could work out for 6 months straight, right? And then don't work out for 6 months straight, right? Oh, your body is weak. You don't have the strength. You don't have the endurance. You don't have anything that you had when you was working out. The same thing applies to faith, right? When your faith is engaged, your faith is intact, you building that faith muscle, developing that faith muscle, and then tragedy strikes. And all of a sudden, there's a wedge between us and God. We're no longer developing that faith muscle. And over time, guess what? We get weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker, right? Which makes us even more susceptible. We like a sitting duck for the enemy. But he really starts to come in and do a number on us because we've been so detached from God and our faith is so weak. We don't even have the strength to fight. We don't have the strength to see. Now we're malnourished, right? Now we're malnourished. Now we can't move. Now we are sitting duck. Now the enemy is like, ooh, you got to remember, he always does isolation before he starts annihilation. So he isolates us, gets us away from God. It's like an abusive relationship. He isolates us and gets us away from God. Now that I've isolated you and I got you away from your friends and your family, I got you away from God and I got you away from positive influences and I got you away from anybody that's going to talk that gospel mess and I got you away from anything that's going to speak life into you. Now that I've isolated you, let me start annihilating you. Oh, let me start annihilating you. That's what abusive relationships do. I'm gonna isolate you, then I'm gonna annihilate you, right? That's what the enemy does. That's what the enemy does. And that's why you got to be careful. I know you in your feelings, but also be in your faith. I know you in your feelings. The only thing that brought me through every tragedy that I went through, and I was in my feelings, but I also was in my faith, right? Oh, I'm gonna be in my feelings. I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna feel some type of way. I'm gonna ask God why. I'm gonna scratch my head. I'm gonna cuss. I'm gonna kick. I'm gonna bark. I'm gonna bite. But guess what? I'm not just gonna be in my feelings. I'm gonna be in my faith too, right? Sometimes it's a struggle, but ultimately I'm gonna be in my faith too. I'm gonna talk crazy, but when he come back, when I come back, what he say, Debo? I talk crazy, but when he come back, I shut up. When he leave, I'll be talking again. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna be in my feelings. Stop being in my faith. I'm gonna be. I'm not gonna stop being in my faith. Just said the pain becomes so overwhelming at times. Absolutely. Absolutely. And the pain is hard because we loved hard. I am so angry. All I want to know is why. Yeah. That's the question we wrestle with. That's the question we wrestle with. That's the question we wrestle with. Why? And we may not always, we may not never get a reply. We may not ever get a reply. We want to know why. We may not ever get a reply. That's good. Advocates versus adversaries. Know the difference. You got to know the difference. Know who the advocate is and who the adversary. So is it wrong to ask? Oh, no, it's definitely not wrong to ask why. You can ask why. I tell people all the time, you can ask why, right? You may not always get a reply, but you can definitely ask why. You can ask why. Well, why? Why did you do this, right? Matter of fact, I encourage you. I encourage you. Just know we can ask why. We may not always get a reply, but we can ask why. That's part of the grief. That's part of the mourning process. Wow, faith over fear. Yes. Man, Holy Spirit is doing this thing. Isolation before annihilation. Yes, that's what it does. That's why you got to be careful. Isolation, he'll isolate you. Abusive relationships, people will isolate you. They'll cut you off from friends and family. They'll cut you off. They'll persuade you to cut off from your friends and family. They'll persuade you to cut off from even going to church. They want to cut off anything that could breathe or speak life into you. Oh, that's got to go, because ultimately it's going to hinder what I'm trying to do. So they cut you off, and that's when they start to annihilate you. That's when the annihilation starts. That's why you got to be super careful. Also beware of misguided grief, like promiscuity, drugs, drinking to numb the pain. God and doing the work is the only way. Those things won't take it away. Yes. So absolutely. We call, healthy and unhealthy coping mechanisms. Because all of this is these how are we coping, right? And you got coping mechanisms that are instrumental, You got coping mechanisms that are detrimental because sometimes we just want to feel anything other than the pain that we're feeling. So, any other feeling that we can get, right, other than the pain that we're feeling. So, we do. It'll be promiscuity because for those moments, I'm feeling something other than this pain, right? I just want to feel something other than this pain. Or drugs, right? Because I want to feel something other than this pain or promiscuity. I want something to numb the pain, anesthetize the pain, anesthetic. That's why when you go to the doctor, you go on the procedure, you have an anesthesiologist, and they tell you what they're going to give you to numb the pain, so you won't feel nothing. So we try to anesthetize the pain that we're going through, and so if it's drink after drink after drink after drink, oh, I don't feel the pain. But this is the trick of the enemy. Right? Once again, you got to remember hidden agendas. Because after we get out from under the sheets, and after we come down from the high, and after we sober up, guess what? The situation ain't changed. The pain is still there. You just numbed it for a minute, right? Oh, it's still there. And so it becomes, what do I do to bring about a lasting healing to this pain? What do I do with this pain? How can I handle it in a way that's instrumental, that will help me, right? That will help me in a positive way to navigate through it. And so we got to do coping mechanisms that are instrumental and not detrimental, because all of that stuff, and yet the pain remains, right? Affair after affair, or you don't have five, six, seven people, and yet the pain remains. Today with the drugs, you definitely got to be careful with this fentanyl going around. Drug deaths, overdoses are through the roof, right? Because of this fentanyl, right? And so you got to be careful even today. You got to be careful, period. But you do that, and yet the pain still remains. You done develop, now you can't go to bed without a nip or a sip, or you need something to get by. You drink. It's 8:39, but right now you're saying it's 5 o'clock somewhere, and you knocking one back, right? And even after all of that, yet the pain still remains. So how do I deal with this pain? And this is the trick of the enemy, y'all. God is the one that can help us. But the enemy has beguiled you because you believe that God is the one who's hurt you, right? So the very one that can help you, the enemy has tricked you to believe that he's the one who hurt you, right? So the source of your help, you believe, is the source of your suffering. So that's why you mad and ain't talking to him. He's sitting here with the prescription to your problem. He's sitting here with the tissue to your issue. He's sitting here with the medicine to your madness, but you think he's the source of your suffering. And so you don't go to him, right? And so that's what you got to know and understand. It's the hidden agenda of the enemy, right? It's a trick. It's a trick, right? So we gotta develop healthy coping strategies and mechanisms. That's what this platform is about. That's what this platform is about. Everything that we do, tools, tips, techniques, and takeaways, practical, portable, and applicable, to give you devotionals like today, life lessons like today, our dragons. Yes, it's like our treasure has been stolen and the dragon rages, and rightfully so. Your treasure has been stolen. So sometimes that grief dragon rages, and sometimes let it out, roar. You got to roar. That's healthy. Roaring is better than getting in some. Roaring is better than getting drunk. Now you leaving the club or the bar and you get into an accident, it's a DUI, and you've killed somebody, right? Or you've lost your life, or you've done significant damage because you're trying to anesthetize the pain. Roaring is better than getting a hold of a bad batch of drugs that's laced with fentanyl, and you're about to lose your life, right? And OD, because you've compounded the problem. Roaring, that thinking about day 63 in the lesson with the dragons, and roaring like a dragon, you might think you look silly, but you're going to be safe. And it's more instrumental than it is detrimental. So we want trying to give you healthy coping strategies, mechanisms, tools, tips, and techniques. Yeah, we done gave you 63 of them. This is day 63. Can you believe it? So there's an outlet. The Bible says God always provides a way of escape, right? So this is your outlet. This is your opportunity. Amen. Marissa Bailey, the other day I was in my feelings and I told God everything I was feeling in my heart at the end of my 45-minute rant to him. I told, although I feel this way right now, I still trust and faith in him. Man, that's what I'm talking about. That's what it's about. Man, go on your 45-minute rant. You know what I'm saying? Had a conversation, express yourself. That's what prayer is for, is dialogue. Not only is it just good to get it out in that fashion, but I'm going to God, the one I can turn to, talk to, and take my issues to, right? And I am 45 minutes, so I'm in my feelings, and I'm about to be in my feelings for 45 minutes, and I'm about to rant. But even at the end of my rant, guess what, God? I still trust you. I still love you, right? I said it yesterday. I made a video here in Indiana. It was 76 degrees 2 days ago, y'all. Yesterday, it rained all day. It dropped down to 30 degrees, and it started snowing. And I said, only in Indiana. This is the Midwest. This is absolutely terrible. This don't make no sense. And I said, I still love it, though. I still don't want to move nowhere else. After all that fussing and complaining, I said, I still love it. I still don't want to move anywhere else. And the same thing applies to God. We can be like, this don't make no sense. You know, it took my love, but I'm going to be in my feelings. But then guess what? I'm going to turn right back around and I'm going to be in my faith at the end of the day. And that's what you got to know, and that's what you got to understand. Oh, we got some good dialogue today, y'all. Was this a blessing to you today? If this was good, drop me a 5 below. That's like giving me a 5. If this was good. I know on the line a lot of people are quiet. You don't say nothing, and that's cool. I'm just glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. We got a lot of people here. You don't say nothing. That's fine. I'm just glad you're here. But if this was good, if this was beneficial, let me say this. If this added value to you, drop me a 5 below. Drop me a 5 below. It's all about adding value. It's all about adding value. The whole goal, the whole purpose, the whole focus is to be able to add value. You know, if it doesn't add value, it's like, why am I doing it? The only number that joins a number and it doesn't affect the outcome is a 0. I don't want to be a 0, right? I want to add value. I want to be in a place and in a position where it's adding value to your life. And so I'm so very glad. I'm so very thankful. Thank y'all so much for joining us. I'm getting ready for our new members class. It's taking place in an hour. Amen. And so I'm about to get out of here. Thank you for joining us. Stay in the village. Stay connected. Let that dragon roar, right? Let that dragon roar as you navigate through your grief. I love you with the love of the Lord. And I look forward to seeing y'all again tomorrow, 8 o'clock, same bat channel, same bat station. Good morning. Let's go.